And so I asked them, and I just put the question out, what did you expect to be doing when you turn 30? Now it was four young men. The oldest one was 16. The youngest one was 13. So between 13 and 16 years old. And when I asked the question, I got four guys in my car. Now these was talkative guys. They all knew each other, and they had no reason to be afraid of me at that point. So it was this hush, a quiet, and I'm driving and I'm asking them, what do you expect to do? And this just was a conversation piece. It was really nothing therapeutic about it. It was just me asking the question. And when nobody answered, I thought, well, what is going on? Then the youngest one, his name was Michael Pierce, by the way. He said, Mr. Allen, I don't even expect to be alive when I get turned 30. So I was like, wow. So if you're 13, you don't expect to live to be 30. That means everything that you do between now, 13, and 30, what? That was 17 years.
Wow.
You don't expect to live. So how can you value anything if you don't expect to be around? So I think that's part of what we are witnessing with young people today. They don't have this expectation that they're going to be able to enjoy life. So they're putting all their marbles in the bucket now. Whatever they can get now. And whoever they need to step on to get to where they need to be, that's what they're going to do. So what
do you think the impact then is going to be now that they know that there are laws on the books that say it's okay to shoot and kill you? How is that going to impact at-risk youth? And you work with quite a few at-risk youth. What message are we telling them?
Well, what I don't think that it's going to change their behavior, unfortunately, because but they never think it's going to happen to them, and at some point they don't think it's going to happen to them on the one hand, and on the other hand they sort of surrender to their fate, right? That's what I think when I mentioned those young men. They have already decided that they're not going to live to be, and we'll say 30. So you can't, we get into some other areas when we talk about this because as a society, we know that we have the ability to change young people. We can do that up until really the age of 14. That's when we see our like things like counseling and all of our interventions really begin to be less effective. Now, why 14? 14 is a turning point. That's this transition point in people's lives. You go from, for example, middle school to high school, right? 14 is that point in most of us who go on to go to college or whatever. 14 is when you start thinking about really what you want to do. What do you want to do in life? You want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be Dr. Pierce Mobley, you want to be, you want to be a football player, a basketball player, an architect, whatever it is. 14 is when those sort of things start to spin in your head. And when you start thinking about your career and what you want to do, it impacts your behavior. Because if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, you have to go to college. You have to do well in school. So it really creates these parameters of behavior. So now you know that you're going to have to do, you can't hang around with folks who don't go to school because you want to go to school because you set these goals. So at 14 is really a critical point. Just like we decided when we were 14 that we wanted to be Dr. Allen and Dr. Pierce Mobley and other folks decided that they want to be lawyers and doctors, people that we know. That's when we did it, really, at 14.
Wow.
And what we have to come to grips with, just like we decided that we wanted to be professionals and we wanted to go to college and all those things, other people decided, people that we know, these people that I know, and I'm sure you know some, at least a few, they decided that they wanted to be gangsters. They decided that they wanted to perfect crime. That was their craft. So, you know, that's why the effectiveness of all of these interventions diminished significantly, because these people decided, and this is what I think we have to come to grips with as a society. If we want to help young people and really deter them away from crime and other illegal activities, we have up until they're about 14 years old. Because after 14, the opportunities diminish significantly. Why? Because they have decided that they want to pursue a life of crime. And I know that's difficult for people to accept, but it's no different than someone deciding they want to pursue being a lawyer or a doctor, because it creates, again, parameters of behavior. If you want to be a criminal, then you have to engage in crime. You want to be the best criminal, so you have to go out and practice your craft. And your craft doesn't involve you going to school, reading and writing. Your craft involves you breaking in folks' houses and understanding how to do it. Your craft involves you going to jail, because then you become authentic. That's how you get respect in your field of practice, so to speak. Just like we get respect in our field of practice by writing and speaking and talking and doing all these things, they have a way of getting expertise in their craft too. We just have a hard time accepting that, because that's the nature of being good at what you do. You have to do it, and criminals have to do it. Now, the fact of the matter is, their life expectancy is very short, and they know that, but they've already decided that's okay, or that they're going to.
So then let me ask you that, because I think of a 14-year-old. I have a son, and I think at 14, there is no way he had the maturity to even make a decision or a life choice like that, you know what, my life's over, so I'm just going to do what comes naturally to me, what comes easy to me, what I see, even though it's dangerous, even though I don't have a life expectancy beyond 30, I'm not looking to go beyond 30. That's frightening to me as a parent. So what do you say then, as there are more guns on the street, as there are more laws that will protect those who will kill young men, because that's who's going to be killed by all these guns? What's the answer for our community? Because this will be our community where young men will be killed exponentially.
Right. Yeah, and that's the challenge. Well, the answer is first to understand what people are up against. And I believe that we have to take control of our own communities. You know, there is a book by, it's called Faces at the Bottom of the Well. Man, I forget the guy's name, Derek, I'll think of it. But he's retired. He might even be, I think he's passed away now. He was a law professor. He's the first tenured law professor at Harvard. And he wrote this book called Faces at the Bottom of the Well. And what he articulates in his book is that we have to fight for what we believe. We have to fight for certain laws. We have to fight to protect our community, right? So anything in the Black community that's valued, before other people will value it, people in those communities have to value. In other words, whatever we believe is necessary to help these young people, we have to do it, whatever that might be. I mean, we have to require that our schools educate. We have to make sure that people are not, young people are not on the streets when they shouldn't be. So we have to recreate the notion of a village. We have to do that. And it has to be of our own doing. It can't be simply follow the laws of the land. We have to create our own laws and expectations in the communities where we raise our children. Because if we don't, you know, they're going now, you know, this scenario I laid out, that's not most of the kids. It's not all of the kids, but it's enough of the children in these communities that will really bring havoc on the community. Most of the kids are not going to engage in crime. Most of the kids are going to listen to their parents. Most of the kids are going to grow up and be good citizens. But those who don't can make it awful difficult for those who want to do the right thing. So we can't allow that. We've got to have a village. And other thing that has to happen, those of us who are fortunate enough to get an education and go away to college and do all those things, we've got to come back. We've got to make ourselves available to these communities. You know, we've got to be there to give them guidance and support in ways that we have been trained. You know, when I remember growing up, and my mother, one thing she would say constantly, this is a single parent raising 5 children, 4 boys and a girl, and we grew up in the heart of the hood. So anything she would ever say, I got to get out of here. I want to get out of here. So my mother kept thinking about getting out. Now, we never made it out, but she talked about it a lot. So when you grow up and when your parents are always talking about leaving where you live, then you get the opportunity to leave, you think it's okay. You know, because I don't want to go back there. I'm going to leave and I'm going to go and I'm going to live someplace else. But then when I got older, I understood why she felt that way. I mean, certainly out of love for her children. But I also understood that if I don't go back, what will happen? I don't necessarily have to live there because I'm not going to put my family at risk. I have a responsibility to my family, but I need to make myself available to enhance or enhance the community. So we can't leave. Our skills have to be at the disposal of these communities. So that's an important piece because, you know, I did some work with a project years ago where I wanted to include my friends in my work. And so I created this mentoring project. And one of the things where, you know, me and my friends would go back to the community where we all grew up and mentor young boys in that community. So that was, and then also provide a support system for each other. And I won't talk about the whole project, but one important part of it was I asked them, did they feel obligated to go back to these communities? Because you have 3 sets of people. You have a small group who go away to college and get an education. That's a small group. I mean, I probably was one of very, very few, maybe. I hate to say I was the only one, but it was only a couple of us. Then there's another group who go to high school, graduate. They might go to community college, but they get a good job. They might get a job at a manufacturing company, a UPS or FedEx, you know, a good job with good pension, and they might work there for 25 years make a good salary. They're able to move their families away to the suburbs and do well for themselves. Then there's another group who experience misfortune, drugs, crime, what have you. So those are basically the three groups. And the largest group is the group in the middle, the group of people who basically just graduate and go to work. Those are that's the largest group. The smallest group, of course, is a group of people who go away to college, right? But they have the skills to help.
To come back and help.
Then there's another large group of people who experience misfortune. And I characterize misfortune as getting involved with crime, drugs, and so on and so forth. So they need each other. The group of people who have the misfortune are typically the people who are still in that neighborhood, right? The group who have, who don't go to college but have a good job, they are not educated, but they're stable. Then the other group who have the education, they're the mystery group, so to speak. They're the group that nobody really understands, if they are still committed to being in that part of that neighborhood, because they think you change. They think you go away to college and you change. So you have to prove that you are still authentic to them. But each group has its role in supporting each other, right? But I wanted to say that, but the most important thing here is I asked this question: do you feel obligated to come back? And what people said, particularly the middle group, they said, no, I don't feel obligated, but I want to, but I don't know how. So they want to come back, they want to be involved, but they really didn't know how to do it. So we have to make available, we have to give opportunities to people who want to come back and be role models, because all of this was around the whole issue of being role models to these kids. And what I learned was what parents really want, particularly single Black women, when they want role models for their children, they want people like me, right? But there aren't very many people like me. There are not enough people like me in these communities so that they can say, well, we're gonna go get Dr. Allen and we want you to be like him. Because remember what I said about my mother not wanting to come back? Most of the people who go away to college, who come from these communities, they leave and don't come back. So those single parents who want role models for their children, what they want really don't exist, because the brothers who they want to role model for their children are not in those communities. And the people who they want to be role models for their children have no interest in being in those communities, because they didn't come from those communities. They came from, you're not from Cleveland, but they came from places like, they came from suburban communities.
Suburban Cleveland.
That's where, even African Americans who go to college typically are middle class people. They're not people who come from poor communities. But my point is, most of the people that are available to these parents to be role models are those people who are still in those communities. And those are the people who experience all the misfortune. So what we have to do, we have to support them. We have to help them sort of recreate themselves and give their lives purpose so that they can be positive role models for those kids in the communities where they remain. And that's our challenge. Our challenge is to take people that's there and let our young people look at those young men, older men who are in the communities, who they see every day, and let them be the models that their parents want them, because they have to recreate themselves. They have to get over all of what they did in the past. Now they give purpose to their lives, but they can't do that without those people who they knew growing up to help them. So this village is a village that goes back over several decades, because that's the only way that we can really help these young men. And that's the reason why you see this continuous floundering, if you will, in many urban communities, because we're really searching for something that don't exist. And so even when we put money in it, you can't change these communities. Now you need money. I'm not saying you don't need money, but you really need the hearts and minds and souls of people who are able to come in and really make a difference, because they want to make a difference and they have the capacity to make the difference. So it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, we're going to get somebody who walk around in a suit and tie to come in and swoop my child up and take him to a football game on Saturday and Sunday and then bring him home. Those young men in particular, but even girls, but boys in particular, they need to wake up every day. And when they go outside, the people they see, that needs to be who they want to emulate. Not because they have riches, but because they have good hearts and they have good character. So if they see somebody get up every day and go to work, even if he's picking up garbage, they can understand and appreciate the work ethic, because that person that's picking up that garbage, he's going to tell him, you go to college so you don't have to pick up garbage. So that's his role model. And that's where we miss out. That's what's missing in our communities to help our young boys develop and be men of character. Because the men in those communities have not been able to provide the kind of modeling, continuous and regular modeling that these young men need. It's a fantasy to believe that people in shirt and ties are going to come in and be models in these communities and it's going to change. That's not going to happen. And that's why it hasn't happened so far. We don't really understand how to transform our communities, because we look to the outside to come inside. That's the wrong approach. We have to look inside the community and really take now we can't take someone who is, been involved in drugs and crime and say, I want you to be the model, because then the model is a person who was a drug addict and criminal. But we have to change him, because now many of them, once they get past what they've done, which usually the life of that lifestyle is usually between 18 and 35. Once they get past that, they get tired of going to jail, and they do some introspection in their life. Now they want to change, but they don't know how. So they need the support to change. But if they can change, we can change them, or support them, I should say, then we have legitimate role models. Because again, they will provide the kind of modeling for those young men that they need, because they will tell them, don't do what I did.
Wow.
And that's what we need, and that's what we don't have. We look to the outside to come in, and it's a cycle of, of disappointment, if you will. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Allen, I can't thank you enough for sharing all of your knowledge and your wealth of experience. And I really hope sincerely that our audience that's watching tonight, that you've placed serious things on all of our minds as a community, as an individual. What's our responsibility? As a community, what is our collective responsibility to be able to make changes in our community? Because you're absolutely right. Money is not going to be the answer. We're going to have to be the answer to make substantive changes in our community. Before we sign off, I'm going to give you the last word. What closing thoughts do you want to leave with our audience?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share, speak with your audience. I would say everyone should, think about what do they need to do to make a difference in the community where they live. you know, I talk about, you know, how, you know, our focus in our community, we put a lot of energy and effort into young men. And I don't mean to disregard young women, because there is a need to support and nurture young girls as well. Just unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of the attention is focused on young boys. But I would say that, you know, people need to hold each other accountable. They need to hold their children accountable. They need to stress the importance and significance of good character and a good education, because that is going to be really the foundation for success. And, you know, everyone should be committed to coming back and making a contribution to the community where they live, or a community similar to the community to where they live. I don't know. I mean, I wish there was an opportunity to answer questions, but that's not.
Well, I definitely am going to have you back. I'm going to put you on the spot. And I would certainly welcome you back. And I think we can certainly talk about a forum where we would allow our audience to ask questions, because you have raised some significant challenges, I think, to all of us. And I just want to thank you for spending some time with us this evening to share just the wealth of knowledge that you have this evening. I want to thank you, Dr. Allen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to the next time.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Research on stand your ground laws shows they are associated with increases in rates of state-level firearm homicide. Counties and states with stand your ground laws experienced a 7% increase in firearm homicide. Homicide is the #1 cause of death in Black Americans between the ages of 15 and 34. Approximately 61% of the gun deaths in 2015 in the United States were suicides. Restrictive state firearms legislation decreases unintentional pediatric suicide and overall firearm-related fatalities. However, it does not affect homicide and Black American firearm-related fatality rates. Ohio passed Stand Your Ground legislation in December 2020.